introduction. I will proceed by describing the extensive support that the United States provided Israel during the recent Lebanon war. Next, I will attempt to show that this support did not make good strategic sense for the United States, and also that there was no compelling moral rationale for it. In fact, the opposite is the case. I will then argue that the main reason the United States supported Israel was the lobby. Finally, I will consider two alternative arguments that Israelis and their supporters in this country sometimes employ to explain America's unconditional support for Israel during the Lebanon conflict. Specifically, I'll examine the claim that U.S. policy reflects American public's deep commitment to Israel, as well as the claim that Israel was acting as America's client state in its war with Hezbollah. In short, I will argue that the Bush administration's policy in Lebanon was not in America's national interest. I might add that I do not think it was in Israel's national interest either. Israel would have been much better off if the United States had given it a red light instead of a green light when it proposed its plan to attack Lebanon. That way, Israel would have been forced to come up with a smarter response and would have avoided the debacle that ensued in Lebanon. American support for Israel in Lebanon started when the Bush administration gave Israel the okay to try to smash Hezbollah at an opportune moment. It now seems clear that Israel had been planning to strike at Hezbollah for months before the July 12 kidnappings, and that key Israelis had briefed the administration about their intentions. The available evidence indicates that the Bush administration enthusiastically endorsed Israel's plans for war in Lebanon. Once the war began, and Israel came in for severe criticism from all around the world, the Bush administration provided Israel with diplomatic protection. It vetoed a UN Security Council resolution that criticized Israel, and it worked assiduously for about a month to prevent the UN from imposing a ceasefire so that Israel could try to finish the job with Hezbollah. Only when it became apparent that the IDF was not going to win a decisive victory did the Bush administration and Israel accept the need for a ceasefire. During the ensuing negotiations, which resulted in Resolution 1701, the United States went to great lengths to protect Israel's interests. In fact, as the resolution was being finalized, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert called President Bush on August 11 and thanked him for, quote, safeguarding Israel's interests in the Security Council, end of quote. The President also frequently defended Israel's actions in public and never offered a word of criticism. John Bolton, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, defended Israel at every turn during the Lebanon war. Finally, the administration provided Israel with intelligence during the conflict, and when Israel started running out of smart bombs, the President quickly agreed to send replacements. It is no surprise that Shai Feldman, an Israeli scholar, said, quote, there is huge appreciation here for the President. Congress has long been the place where Israel finds its strongest support in America, and its behavior during the Lebanon conflict confirmed that situation. Democrats and Republicans competed to show that their party, not the rival one, was Israel's best friend. One Jewish activist said that he thought that, quote, it's a good thing to have members of Congress outdo their colleagues by showing their pro-Israeli credentials are stronger than the next guys. In the end, there was virtually no daylight between the two parties regarding Israel, which is quite remarkable when you think of the sharp differences between the two parties on most other important foreign policy issues, like Iraq, for example. In terms of concrete actions, the House of Representatives passed a strongly worded resolution supporting Israeli policy in Lebanon. The vote was 410 to 8. The Senate unanimously passed a similar resolution, which was sponsored by 62 senators, including the leaders of both parties. A number of prominent Democrats, including the party's leaders in both the House and the Senate, tried to prevent Iraq's prime minister from addressing Congress because he had dared to criticize Israeli policy in Lebanon. Howard Dean, the chairman of the Democratic Party, went so far as to say the Iraqi prime minister is an anti-Semite. Potential presidential candidates for 2008, like Hillary Clinton, John McCain, Joe Biden, and Newt Gingrich, were falling all over themselves to express their support for Israel. The only exception to that rule was Senator Chuck Hagel, who expressed mild reservation about what Israel and the United States were doing in Lebanon. One can be sure that he stands zero chance of becoming the next president of the United States.